Wayne sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel tightly as he looked out into the darkness. It was a moonless night, and the only source of light came from his car's headlights cutting through the thick fog that enveloped the road. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. He had always been a cautious driver, but tonight he couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It had all started a few days ago when Wayne received an anonymous letter in his mailbox. The letter contained a single sentence: "I know what you did." There was no return address or any indication of who the sender might be. Wayne racked his brain, trying to think of anything he might have done to warrant such a message, but he came up empty. Unable to shake off the feeling of unease, Wayne decided to go for a drive to clear his mind. He had always found solace in the open road, and maybe tonight would be no different. As he navigated the winding country lanes, his mind started to wander. Thoughts of the letter consumed him, and he became increasingly paranoid. Suddenly, Wayne's headlights illuminated a figure standing by the side of the road. He slammed on the brakes, his heart pounding in his chest. The figure was wearing a long, dark coat and a hat pulled low over their face, obscuring their features. Wayne rolled down his window, trying to see who it was. "Can I help you?" he called out, his voice quivering with fear. The figure didn't respond. Instead, they stepped closer to the car, their eyes hidden in the shadow of the hat. Wayne's instincts screamed at him to drive away, but his curiosity got the better of him. He waited, frozen in place, as the figure reached into their coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. They tossed it through the open window and walked away without saying a word. Wayne watched the figure disappear into the darkness before cautiously picking up the envelope. His hands trembled as he opened it, revealing the single photograph. His blood turned to ice as he stared at the picture. It was a snapshot of him, taken from a distance, sitting in his car. The photo was dated from just a few days ago. Fear washed over Wayne like a tidal wave. He quickly looked around, but the figure was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in as he realized that someone had been watching him, someone who knew his every move. He had to find out who was behind this and why they were tormenting him. Wayne's hands trembled as he clutched the photograph, his mind racing with questions. Who was watching him, and why? He couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being dragged into something far more sinister than he could have ever imagined. Determined to unravel the mystery, Wayne decided to retrace his steps and search for any clues. He drove back to the place where he had received the anonymous letter, hoping to find something he might have missed before. As he carefully combed through the area, his eyes caught a glimmer in the bushes nearby. He approached cautiously, his heart pounding in his ears. Buried in the foliage, Wayne discovered a small battered smartphone. Its screen was cracked, but it still powered on. His hands trembling, he unlocked the phone and started scrolling through its contents. There were several photos, all taken from a distance, capturing Wayne in various mundane activities. At work, grocery shopping, even inside his own home. The realization struck Wayne like a bolt of lightning. He had been under surveillance for weeks, maybe even months. His every move had been meticulously observed and documented. The invasion of his privacy sent chills down his spine, and he knew he had to find the person responsible. Wayne continued his investigation, desperate to uncover any leads that would lead him to the person behind the surveillance. He retraced his recent interactions, questioning friends and colleagues, but nobody seemed to have any knowledge of the mysterious watcher. The fear and paranoia gnawed at him, making him question everyone and everything around him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Wayne received an anonymous phone call. A distorted voice whispered sinisterly, "You're getting closer, Wayne. But be careful. The truth can be a dangerous thing." The call ended abruptly, leaving Wayne shaken to his core. It was evident that the person watching him was aware of his investigation, and they were willing to go to great lengths to keep their identity hidden. Night after night, Wayne embarked on long drives, hoping to catch a glimpse of his pursuer. He became consumed by his search for answers, neglecting his own well-being and losing touch with reality. The sleepless nights and constant paranoia took a toll on him, his mind playing tricks on him at every turn. One fateful night, as Wayne sped down a desolate stretch of road, his car's engine suddenly sputtered and died. Panic surged through his veins as he tried desperately to restart the vehicle, but to no avail. He was stranded, alone in the darkness. It felt like the perfect trap, orchestrated by his tormentor. Just as despair began to consume him, Wayne noticed the faint glimmer of headlights in the distance. A car approached, its headlights cutting through the fog. Relief washed over him as the vehicle pulled up beside him, and a stranger rolled down the window. "Need a lift?" the stranger asked, his voice filled with an eerie calmness. Wayne hesitated, his instincts warring within him, but he knew he had no other choice. He climbed into the stranger's car, his heart pounding in his chest, unsure of what awaited him. Elsa sat in her car, her knuckles turning white as she gripped the steering wheel. The road ahead stretched out into the darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow of her headlights. She had always enjoyed the solitude of a late-night drive, but tonight was different. Tonight, a sense of unease hung heavy in the air. Earlier that day, Elsa had received a cryptic message on her phone. It was a single sentence: "I know what you did." There was no caller ID or any indication of who the sender might be. The message sent shivers down her spine, as memories she had tried to bury resurfaced. She couldn't fathom who would know her darkest secret. Determined to shake off her fears, Elsa decided to take a drive, hoping the open road would provide some solace. But as she drove through the deserted streets, her mind couldn't escape the haunting message. Questions swirled in her head. Who could possibly know? What would they do with this information? Paranoia gnawed at her, causing her heart to race with each passing mile. Lost in her thoughts, Elsa barely noticed the figure standing by the side of the road until her headlights illuminated them. She slammed on the brakes, her breath catching in her throat. The figure wore a long, tattered coat, and their face was obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. Elsa rolled down her window, her voice trembling. "Can I help you?" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure remained silent, their gaze fixed on Elsa. A chill ran down her spine as they slowly approached her car. Instinct urged her to drive away, but something compelled her to stay. The figure reached into their coat pocket and pulled out an envelope, holding it out towards Elsa. Without a word, they turned and disappeared into the night. Trembling, Elsa reached for the envelope and tore it open. Inside, she found a single photograph. Her hand shook as she looked at the picture, her heart sinking. It was an image of her, taken from a distance, engaging in a clandestine meeting she had thought no one knew about. The photograph was dated from just a few days ago. Fear gripped Elsa like a vice. How could someone know about her secret rendezvous? Who was watching her every move? Her mind raced with possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. She knew she had to uncover the truth, to find out who was behind this and why they were tormenting her. Elsa's hands trembled as she stared at the photograph, her mind racing with a mix of fear and determination. She couldn't comprehend how someone had managed to capture her secret meeting on camera. It felt as if her entire world was crumbling around her. With a newfound sense of urgency, Elsa delved deeper into the mystery. She retraced her steps, meticulously dissecting every detail of her recent interactions, searching for any clue that would lead her to the person behind the photograph. She questioned her acquaintances, reviewed her own actions, and even hired a private investigator to assist her. Days turned into sleepless nights as Elsa grew increasingly paranoid. The walls of her once comfortable home seemed to close in on her, and she felt like a trapped animal. Every shadow, every whisper seemed to taunt her, fueling her determination to unmask the voyeur who held her secrets in their clutches. One evening, as Elsa drove down a desolate road, her mind consumed by thoughts of her tormentor, a flicker of movement caught her attention in the rearview mirror. A dark figure appeared in the distance, steadily gaining ground. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Fear mingled with curiosity as Elsa realized she was being followed. The figure trailed her at a constant distance, their presence looming like a specter in the night. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but a surge of defiance propelled her forward. She couldn't let them intimidate her any longer. With a surge of determination, Elsa made a split-second decision. She abruptly veered off the main road, her tires screeching as she turned into a narrow, winding path leading deep into the woods. She glanced at her rearview mirror, watching as the figure hesitated before following her into the darkness. As the dense forest closed in around her, Elsa's heart pounded in her ears. She pushed her car to its limits, maneuvering through the treacherous terrain, desperate to escape her pursuer. The headlights of the mysterious figure's vehicle grew closer, casting eerie shadows among the trees. A sudden flash of inspiration struck Elsa. She swerved sharply, her car careening off the road and crashing into a thick cluster of trees. The impact jolted her, leaving her disoriented and battered, but she knew it was her only chance to confront her stalker. Determined to protect herself and unveil the truth, Elsa stumbled out of her car and confronted the figure who had been trailing her relentlessly. With her heart racing, she demanded answers, her voice filled with a mix of fear and defiance. The figure stepped out of their vehicle, their face finally revealed. It was a familiar face, someone Elsa had never suspected, her closest friend, Sarah. The shock on Elsa's face mirrored Sarah's own turmoil. "Why, Sarah? Why did you do this?" Elsa's voice quivered with a mix of hurt and betrayal. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she tried to explain herself. She confessed to having discovered Elsa's secret by chance, stumbling upon the clandestine meeting. Overwhelmed by jealousy and resentment, she had succumbed to the temptation of exploiting Elsa's vulnerability. "I wanted to hurt you, Elsa. I wanted you to feel the pain that you caused me," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Elsa was overcome with a mix of anger, sadness, and empathy. She realized the depth of Sarah's anguish and how it had twisted their once unbreakable bond. While the revelation shattered their friendship irreparably, Elsa couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for the person Sarah had become. As the night closed around them, Elsa made a choice. She chose forgiveness, not for Sarah's sake, but for her own. She knew that carrying the weight of resentment would only consume her. With a heavy heart, she turned her back on Sarah, leaving her to confront the consequences of her actions. Elsa drove away from the darkness, leaving the night behind her. She learned that secrets, when exposed, could reshape lives and test the limits of trust. Yet, she also discovered the strength to face her fears, to confront her past, and to forge a new path in the light. The night drive had changed Elsa forever, but she vowed to emerge stronger, resilient, and more attuned to the power of forgiveness.